Our industry is changing, and as a result, your dealership has to change to remain relevant and successful. But change is hard for dealerships. In this episode, we're going to talk about the change management approach we teach managers in our Dealership Managers Academy. And then you can use this episode's material to train your managers to embrace change. And as a result, you will have your dealership prepared to confront the rapid pace of innovation our industry is experiencing. Stay tuned, a lot to talk about in this episode of Down Payment.
Welcome to Down Payment, the podcast for used car dealers. Prepare to learn something new about the industry that keeps us moving.
Check out all our podcast content on our social media channels. We are at Down Payment Podcast on YouTube, Down Payment Podcast on Instagram, and Down Payment Pod on X. Welcome back, dealers. We're talking about change again in this episode of Down Payment. Change is a recurrent topic. We talk about it a lot. And in this episode, we're going to talk about the change management curriculum that we teach dealership managers in our Dealership Managers Academy. This is vital material because change is just part of the industry nowadays. For so many years, dealers could teach and operate their businesses according to the same process year after year after year. That stagnation is over. You need to create a culture of agile managers that can implement changes big and small. And to do that, it requires training. It requires embracing the idea of constant change. We teach a change management roadmap, and change can come in two different flavors. Some change is big and transformational and dramatic and needs to be done in a short amount of time. But most change is subtle, small, adaptive changes that over a period of time will accumulate to big transformational changes. And these are the changes that are most important to be really good at it. So you need to have a process that your managers consistently follow when conditions require modification to your policies, procedures, and practices. We teach 5 steps, and every single one of those steps is absolutely vital to get good at. The first step should be reflexive, and that is gather information. We're going to talk more about what that means here in a second. Step 2, collaborate and plan. Just because you know what the solution is in your mind doesn't mean that's the right solution. You need to have managers that can collaborate and plan out better solutions. We'll also talk more about that. The third step is actually implementing the solution and using one of several managerial tools in order to effectuate that change. Step 4, embed and normalize that change. You need to make it part of your culture. And then step 5, you need to review and evaluate. Your fix that you think is going to be so good might not actually be as good as you thought it was. So you have to have that step 5, review and evaluate, to evaluate the effectiveness of your change. So let's go through those steps again, but in detail. Step 1, gather information. What do we mean by this? Well, why do most fixes fail? They fail because the solution itself actually creates more problems than you had beforehand. Before implementing a change, your managers need to be able to do their homework. They need to do a thorough information gathering step where they investigate and do a root cause analysis. They identify all of the things that are going wrong in a particular process, and they also look for collateral effects. If I change a certain process, what are the other things that are going to domino effect from that change? All of that should be evaluated at the beginning. And then it feeds into step 2. That is collaborating and planning a solution. So we gathered information, we have an understanding of what the problem is. How do we fix it? And we want to start with the end in mind. There's an end state or an end goal we have with our solution. Now, what do we need to do to actually execute upon it? You're going to want to document the change process, and you also want to be looking for indicators of success. Key performance indicators. So whenever we implement a change, if we can get quantitative indicators of whether our change is successful or not, identify them and gather information once we implement that change, that's going to give us a lot of valuable feedback if we're effective or not. Super valuable. From there, we implement that change. Step 3. So after your new process has been discussed, you need to have managerial interventions. This is stuff from the manager's toolbox that we use to enforce a change. We want to have policy changes, procedure changes, maybe some training to support it, some coaching and mentoring. All of these are things that we do to actually implement change, and then we keep doing them. In step 4, embed and normalize the change. It is very easy to revert back to old ways if you let that happen. It's up to the managers to take the time to continually enforce that adjustment to process and make sure it's working, which leads us to step 5, review and evaluate the effectiveness of the change. It is very likely for any important modification to a process in your business that some fine-tuning needs to happen. It's an ongoing process of reviewing and evaluating. And those key performance indicators to tell you whether your change is effective or not, that you identified hopefully in step 2, well, you're looking at them in step 5 and making decisions whether you need to go back and repeat the change management process and try to get further improvement. Because those small, gradual, incremental adjustments to your business are absolutely essential to success in this industry. It's not sufficient to have 90% of your business processes effective in this business. You really need to have almost everything running right to be truly a great dealership. If you can get to that level, you will find a lot of success in that industry, and this is the way to do it. With that, go sell some cars. It's been another episode of Down Payment. Check out our podcast on all our social media channels. We are at Down Payment Podcast on YouTube, Down Payment Podcast on Instagram, and Down Payment Pod on X.
Thank you for listening. Down Payment, the podcast for used car dealers, is a production of Meta Financial Services Incorporated.